Hello, this is my digital unit resources page on American civics. And this page is intended specifically to cover the issues about citizenship. Now, I believe that this is a complex subject matter, and it's worth it to go into more detail about it. And on this first homepage, we can see a picture of Martin Luther King Jr., Abraham Lincoln, and Cesar Chavez as three examples of influential figures in American civics. I have some information on myself, where I got my bachelor's from, and what I studied in university, as well as some accomplishments I have. How I'm attempting to get my single subject teaching credential from Cal State Fullerton, and some of my hobbies. There's an overview video of myself presenting about this information, and of course, a picture of me and my two dogs right there. I outline right here in the beginning the state standards from California Department of Education covering Unit 2.2 that concern the limits and rights and obligations of democratic citizens, and with particular emphasis throughout this unit on the sixth portion on how to become a U.S. citizen, as well as naturalization and other requirements along those steps. I realize this is a very complicated subject matter for a civics class, so I felt like it would be good to spend some extra time on this. This would be for a senior year class, 12th grade, covering citizenship and naturalization, and giving background about all of that information. I have a definition of civics and what it means to be informed as a future citizen. And lastly, the page closes with three quotes, one from Thomas Paine, Theodore Roosevelt, and Jackie Robinson, as well as contact information for me for students and parents who might wish to contact me in the future. Then there's my page, What is Civics?, in which I expand on the definition. It's useful in becoming an informed voter and to be knowledgeable about current events and the workings of government. And I go into some information about that, which I mentioned passing a citizenship test, which I allude to later on in the website. And I include a video on duties and responsibilities of U.S. citizens, and then a hypothetical map of did not vote in the 2020 U.S. presidential election as a source to show the potential drawbacks of not being informed. And I think this picture is quite alarming, and it's an attention grabber. Under useful links, I wanted to give students some frame of reference for places where they could do research when they look at all of this information. And some I have at the Library of Congress, which just has loads and loads of information for them to look up. A ISIG with website, which it has a political test, but it also contains lots and lots of issues, candidates, ballot measures, and everything else with that. The Census Bureau, which has tons of demographic information and surveys. The U.S. courts, which is something I imagine would be very handy to look at in a civics class. Internet Archive, because they have great access to the books. And then, of course, Citation Machine for writing papers and Grammarly to check the grammar. And lastly, a copy of the Federalist Papers for them to refer to, because what's a civic class without the Federalist Papers? As well as a list of fallacies and cognitive biases so that we can discuss the kind of biases that voters can play into when discussing politics. Under digital interactives, first part of this is classroom tools, in which Poplet for presentations. The idea of this page would be for them to use these tools for in-class projects or papers or organizing their thinking. Padlet, because it's very interactive and you could have anonymous surveys with that. Quizlet, which I also use in the class so that we can look into making flashcards, quizzes, and study guides for them, in which I demonstrate in a future page in the class. Edmodo, it's great for organizing schedules, assignments, guidelines, communications, and just general goings on and getting feedback from parents and teachers and students. I have videos on organization skills. And then lastly, I have interactive tests. The first one is the test I mentioned, the ISAG with political test, which is very, very long and detailed, but very useful. And then the slightly shorter, a little bit more controversial political compass test, which I demonstrate the quadrants right there. And it would be an interesting thing for high school students to see where they stand with that. Assistive technology. Now, the idea with this one is practical uh, details, information, tech they can use to help them day-to-day basis with the class. So I have Scribble, so that they can make citations, online articles, helps them focus. Perhaps it could help you if you had ADHD or another learning disability to be able to make notes right on the websites you look at. MindMeister is great for graphic organizers and putting together projects and visualizing out the information. There's a Comic Sans enabler, which is, I'm told, is easiest font to read for people who are dyslexic, but also it's slightly easier contrast for other readers. And lastly, there's a extension called Mate, which translates. So if they were an ELL student, they can translate the information and read online, no matter what the source is online. Internet use. A little bit of a longer page. I go on a speech about internet use for students and how they should be careful with what they do online and how there's phishing scams and people who want their own personal information. As I say right here, don't reply to email, text, pop-up messages, ask for personal info, and don't respond to it, and be very careful who you give the info out to, including telephone numbers where people can contact you on social media, and only sharing information with trusted sources such as close friends, relatives, schoolmates, and instructors, and to never give out passwords, as well as tips for passwords, and not doing the classic password of 1234 issue. I also give them web resources such as Google Scholar to do research so they can avoid phishing scams with well-cited information. DuckDuckGo is a search engine that doesn't keep track of your search information. And uBlock Origin is great for getting past scammers and not being fished upon online. This is maybe my favorite section of website, my graphic organizer, the Citizenship Critical Reading Assignment. It's a KWL model, which is a pre, present, and post-reading activity to process the information in a formative way. And as I mentioned before, it follows the 6 guideline in the 12.2 section of the standards of history. And it's a group project that they would go into. And the idea is they would split up and read these 3 different articles about citizenship, naturalization, and then some history on the subject matter. And I give them a preformed form of this to compare, as well as a blank form below. I also summarize the information, what they need to look for, 5 pieces of information in each of the 3 sections, and then the rubric right here. The assessments I have right here for this one is from QuizMonkey. You would click on the link and follow it. It's 10 simple questions about citizenship. It's intended to come before you do the graphic organizer and before you did the teacher lecture. Then the summative assessment is they write an essay on a subject matter related to citizenship, in which I make it very broad and give them lots of opportunity to do different resources if they please. Just whatever makes it easier for them to be able to handle this. Or I give them the option of doing a video essay, which I do have guidelines right there. Some videos on how to film yourself. And then a miscellaneous one. Perhaps they want to teach the class, make flashcards, do a song, whatever it might be, as long as they follow the list of sources, and then, of course, the overall rubric for them to follow. Next is the choice board activity, which taps into multiple intelligence theory. And on the choice board itself, the idea is it doesn't have to be tic-tac-toe, but it can also just connect, as you'll see, as long as they're adjacent to each other, but they can't be disconnected, to combine the different intelligences, which is the outline of what the board looks like. Explain this information, how it connects into their different intelligences in mind, and making videos and using classroom tools, and then the general rubrics for all the information, if it's paper, video, or some other format. And once again, the rubric covering organization, the clarity of opinion, and detail and evidence to thoughts. Lastly is the teacher lecture on citizenship, which I would plan to open with this information. And it goes over the overviews of citizenship, the history, how it works in the US, who it applies to, what it means today, tying to current events, and then closing reflective questions. You can see there. And as well in the video, there's video links. You watch down here to connect with the lecture further on questions about citizenship. And lastly, with this lecture are the guided notes, which can either work as a supplement, or they can do with their own notes. And because there's also reflective questions, multiple choice, fill in the blanks, it just gives them a good nudge in what they should be looking for in the lecture. And I have pictures with the information, list them out as questions, notes, and then multiple choice section. And that is my digital unit resource. And I think it would be very handy for handling the question of citizenship in a civics class. And I would hope that future students would like the interactivity of it.